These are the blunders from down thunder that made Australia great.
It was the year 1935 and Reg Mungomery at the Bureau of Sugar Experiment Stations had a problem. Native Australian cane beetles were ruining sugarcane crops. Pesticides were not ideal because of their harmful effects on the ecosystem. After reading about how cane toads were being used to control sugarcane pests in Puerto Rico and Hawaii, Reg decided to import some cane toads into Australia. It didn't go well.
Welcome to this episode of Blunders Down Under, laughable lessons from the past, in which we talk about dumb decisions from the past which have helped make Australia great. I'm Josh McGrath.
And I'm John Gibbs, and today we're talking about Reginald William Mungomery, the man credited with introducing cane toads into Australia.
So who was Reg Mungomery?
Born in 1901, Reg Mungomery worked as an entomologist, an insect expert, for the Queensland Bureau of Sugar Experiment Stations. His job was to find ways of controlling pests that cause damage to sugarcane plants, and he came up with some important improvements in methods of applying pesticides. However, despite his successes with insecticides, Reg preferred using natural predators to control pests.
So which insect was giving Reg the most trouble?
There were two types of beetles that were ruining sugarcane crops. The grey-backed cane beetle, Dermolepida albohirtum, and French's beetle, Lepidiota frenchi. These beetles are native to Australia. The adult beetles eat sugarcane leaves, but the larvae feed on the roots, which is the main problem. The eggs and larvae are usually buried underground, making them difficult to exterminate. Arsenic, pitch and copper had been used as pesticides, but they weren't very effective and they had the undesirable effect of killing other types of insects.
Where did Reg get the idea of using cane toads to catch and eat these beetles?
Cane toads, which had originated in Barbados, had been imported into Puerto Rico in an attempt to control native beetle larvae which had been eating sugarcane crops there. The effort was largely successful, and in 1932 a researcher named Raquel Dexter published an influential paper on the insect diets of cane toads. Based on her findings, cane toads had been introduced to Hawaii, and after reading the relevant publications, Reg thought cane toads might be worth trying in Australia.
How did the first lot of cane toads get into Australia?
In 1935, Reg was sent to Hawaii to collect specimens of the cane toad, and he brought 102 of them back to Australia. Over the next 2 years, 62,000 toadlets were bred in captivity and released into areas around Queensland. From there, the cane toads kept breeding and spreading.
And were these cane toads successful in stopping these beetles?
No. It turned out that the cane toads weren't interested in eating cane beetles. They were much happier eating almost anything else, which they proceeded to do with a voracious appetite. They were a failure when it came to protecting sugarcane in Australia, and they turned into a much more harmful pest than the beetles which they'd been brought in to control.
And how have these cane toads spread?
Female cane toads produce between 8,000 and 35,000 eggs at a time and can breed twice a year. At first their spread in Australia seemed fairly slow, but by 1959 they had colonised most of Queensland's east coast. In 1964 they reached the Gulf of Carpentaria. In 1978, they reached the border of New South Wales, and by 1984, they'd reached the border of the Northern Territory. In 2001, they reached Kakadu National Park, and in 2009, they reached the Western Australian border. By 2011, they were prevalent around Kununurra. By 2019, they were in the Torres Strait Islands, and by 2022, they were present around parts of Sydney.
So what harm do these cane toads cause?
Cane toads eat almost anything they can fit into their mouths. They mostly eat insects, but they also eat spiders, snails, small frogs, other cane toads, reptiles, mammals, pet food, household scraps, cigarette butts, and rubbish. Because cane toads have become so prolific, they've taken over the food sources of many native animals and insects. Thus, many native species have been wiped out or almost wiped out, either because of being eaten by cane toads or because of losing their food sources to cane toads.
But if cane toads were natural predators brought in to eat beetles, surely there's a natural predator that can be brought in to eat cane toads.
Unfortunately, it's difficult to find predators that can eat cane toads. They have glands which secrete a poison known as bufotoxin. Their skin and other glands across their backs are also toxic. The result is that animals which try to eat cane toads get poisoned and die. This includes pets such as cats and dogs, as well as numerous native species which are dying out as a result. Native animals which have suffered declines in numbers after being poisoned by cane toads include snakes, goannas, quolls, turtles, and crocodiles.
Well, do cane toads actually have any practical uses?
Some attempts have been made to process cane toad carcasses into liquid fertilizers. Some entrepreneurs have made cane toad skin into leather and created luxury fashion handbags from the skins. I'm not sure that people are queuing up to buy them, though.
Well, what about any sporting uses that cane toads have?
In cane toad golf, the cane toad is used as the ball. He just sits there as you line him up and then tee off. In cane toad cricket, the cane toad is again used as the ball, but you want to make sure you wash your hands well afterwards. An annual Toad Day Out is held in Townsville. Everyone goes out and hunts for toad, with prizes awarded for the heaviest toads and the school which captures the most toads by weight. Cane toad races are also popular, with toads being given humorous names and racing against each other, while punters place their bets. Winners get to kiss their toads.
Well, are we being completely fair on blaming Reg Mungomery for Australians' cane toads problem?
Probably not. The problem wasn't with the idea of testing cane toads to see if they'd be effective in controlling Australian cane beetles. The problem was in releasing a non-native species into the Australian ecosystem without adequately planning for the possible consequences. Nevertheless, Reg is the one who goes down in history as the person who brought the first cane toads into Australia.
So what's the moral of this story?
It doesn't matter how many frogs you kiss, you will never find one that turns into a prince.